Today, we are diving into one of the most intense, frankly unsettling visions in the entire Bible. It comes from the prophet Ezekiel, and it's this dramatic story of devotion, betrayal, and a departure so world-shattering it would change everything. And it really forces us to wrestle with a pretty terrifying question. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. The temple in Jerusalem wasn't just a building. It was considered God's literal home on earth. It was the very center of worship, of national identity, of divine protection. So what on earth could be so bad, so deeply corrupt, that God himself would just pack up and leave? Well, that's the exact mystery at the heart of this vision. All right, so let's set the scene. It's September 592 BC. The prophet Ezekiel isn't even in Jerusalem. He's in exile, living hundreds of miles away in Babylon. He's just sitting in his house with some of the elders of Judah when, bam, the hand of the Lord just falls on him, and he's pulled into a vision. Now, we got to be clear about what kind of vision this is, because it's different from others Ezekiel had. Earlier in his story, God's Spirit literally picked him up and moved his physical body. Not this time. Here, his body stays put, right there in his chair in Babylon. This is a spiritual journey, a kind of trance where his spirit is whisked away to Jerusalem to be a witness. Okay, to really get what happens next, you have to understand this one crucial concept. In Ezekiel's world, God's presence isn't just one single thing. You have the traditional static presence, the one that dwells in the most sacred room of the temple, the Holy of Holies. But then there's this other presence, a dynamic, mobile one, riding on an incredible fiery throne chariot. Keep that idea of a double presence in your head. It is the absolute key to this entire story. So, Ezekiel's spirit arrives in Jerusalem, and God basically says, come on, I'm going to give you a tour. But this is not a fun sightseeing trip. No, he's about to be shown 4 specific acts, 4 abominations that are going to peel back the curtain and show just how rotten things have gotten back home. And what he sees is just this escalating disaster. First, there's a pagan idol set up right near the temple entrance. Bad. But then it gets worse. He's shown a secret room where 70 of Israel's elders, the leaders, are burning incense to carvings of animals. Then, right at the temple gate, women are openly weeping for a foreign Babylonian god. And the final straw? In the inner court, the most sacred space, 25 men literally turn their backs on God's temple to bow down and worship the sun. Each act is just a deeper and more profound betrayal than the last. Now, here's a fascinating little detail. Scholars point out that Ezekiel probably isn't watching a live stream of all this happening at once. It's more like God is showing him a curated greatest hits of corruption. How do we know? Well, that ritual of mourning for Tammuz always happened in June or July, but Ezekiel's visions is in September. So God is essentially compiling evidence, showing him scenes from different times to build an undeniable case. And God himself says it plain as day. He turns to Ezekiel and says, "Mortal, do you see this? Do you see what they're doing? These great abominations? They're doing them to drive me far from my sanctuary." It's not that God is just deciding to leave. Their actions are literally pushing him out. So, after showing Ezekiel exactly why he has to leave, the vision shifts to the main event, and it is devastating. We witness the slow, deliberate, step-by-step departure of God's presence from Jerusalem. This isn't a quick exit. It's a slow, painful process, and every single stage is just dripping with ominous meaning. And so it begins. The glory of God, that static presence, moves for the very first time. It leaves its place above the cherubim in the Holy of Holies, the most sacred spot on earth, and it moves to the threshold of the temple. The protector is heading for the door. Remember that double presence? Well, here's where they link up. The glory that just left the inner sanctuary moves out into the courtyard and merges with that mobile throne chariot that's been waiting. God's presence is now fully consolidated and ready to move. There's nothing tying it to this place anymore. The journey out continues. The entire throne chariot lifts off, moves from the temple complex itself, and stops at the eastern gate of the city. It's this moment of terrible suspense, almost like one last look back before leaving for good. And then it happens. The throne chariot rises up, ascends over the Mount of Olives to the east, and just disappears over the horizon. The divine presence, the protection, the very identity of the city is gone. Jerusalem is left vulnerable. So what happens when a city's divine protector leaves? Well, the vision immediately shows us the consequences. With God's presence gone, the city is defenseless, and judgment is about to fall. The moment God's glory is gone, 6 figures appear.
They are armed with shattering weapons, ready for slaughter. These are the destroying angels, and their mission is as clear as it is terrible: to execute the punishment the city has brought upon itself.
But among them is a seventh figure, and he's completely different. He's clothed in simple linen, and he's not carrying a weapon. He's carrying a writer's inkhorn. His job isn't destruction, it's salvation. So who gets saved? It has nothing to do with wealth or power or status. The only ones who are spared are the people who are genuinely heartbroken by all the corruption in the city, the ones who sigh and groan over the evil they see. The scribe goes through and puts a mark on their foreheads, and the destroying angels pass them by.
And Ezekiel, watching this horrific judgment unfold, is just crushed. He falls on his face and he cries out, "O Lord God, are you going to completely wipe out everyone who's left?" It's this moment of raw human desperation from the prophet himself, pleading for his people.
But then, just as the vision hits its absolute darkest point, it makes this incredible pivot. After all this judgment on Jerusalem, an unexpected message of hope appears. But it's not for the people left in the city. It's for Ezekiel and the other exiles, way out in Babylon.
You get this wild contrast. The people still in Jerusalem, they're arrogant. They're saying, "Ha, those exiles got kicked out for being wicked. This land is ours now." But God's message is the exact opposite. He tells the exiles, "Hey, even though you're far from the temple, I will be your sanctuary." His presence isn't stuck in a building, it's with them, in exile.
And this leads to the ultimate promise. God tells the exiles that they have a future. He promises this incredible spiritual transformation, like divine heart surgery. He says he will take out their stubborn, rebellious heart of stone and give them a soft, responsive heart of flesh, a new spirit that will finally allow them to truly follow him. The temple might be gone, but the relationship itself can be rebuilt from the inside out. And that leaves us with a huge question to think about. Ezekiel's vision is this terrifying warning, for sure, but it's also a profound story about what presence really means. It makes you wonder, when a physical, sacred space is lost or destroyed, is that the end of faith? Or could it actually be the painful, necessary beginning of a different kind of faith, one that isn't tied to a location, but to a person and a promise?